Welcome to How to ABX Open Burn Day. Today is 8/25/2023. I will talk about the character rotation, show you really quick, and then we'll go into some more information. So if you're just here for the rotation, here you go. So I'm going to be using Jean Grey, and I'm basically going to be spamming everything with a slight delay on 5 and 3. I have spoken with others who do slightly different rotations. For example, they will wait a little bit on 1 and they'll make sure that she does the throw before they go into other cancels, but mostly she's pretty much a spam character. That slight delay does allow you to do a little bit more damage. So let me go ahead and give you an example. Switching the Jean, and I like to use the 4-2-1, 5-3. It doesn't really matter the order. If they're on cooldown, use them. That's the basic rule of thumb. If it's available, use it. Just hang for a second or two, not even a full second, like half a second on 5 and 3. Even her 6 and her her 7's just a striker skill, but even her 6 is pretty much instantly cancelable. So even when that comes up, you can cancel it right away, and you will do more damage that way. Couple folks had mentioned this to me, and I learned how to play this way. Matanner from After 5 Avengers Alliance actually mentioned this to me because I was actually waiting for her wings to pop. Apparently you don't need to do that. So he is about to jump center. Jean is able to cancel as well, so it is kind of nice that you can pretty much use any skill that you want. Not really worry about which skill to use for canceling, since she can cancel. As you can see, there is a green thumb up on her 6, on her 4, on her 2, and on her 1. When I'm playing this, I pretty much try to stare at just the keypad for the abilities and looking at the numbers and where the cooldown are. That's typically where I focus my attention. It is important to prioritize 6 because you want to make sure that 6 is being recharged as much as possible, so you can spam that 6 as often as possible as well. He's about to jump center here, but I am still going to be spamming because, again, I can kind of cancel with all these abilities. Okay, so he is going to center here. As soon as he is targetable again, I'm just going to start spamming the skills again. I did try to make my video a little bit smaller with my face so that you can actually see the skills getting pressed. I noticed in my earlier videos for how to ABX that I was covering up the skills. So for those of you who want to see the skills a little bit better, you should have a better opportunity to see them over my shoulder, even though I've got this huge chair in the way. Alright, he's going to be jumping center here in a second. Probably could have waited on that 6, but that's alright. Like I said, we can still cancel. It's just that 6. I think I lost a little bit of damage with him being untargetable. Not a big deal. I think we're still going to have a reasonably high score. Open Day is a little bit easier. You have a little bit more variety of characters you can use. Jean is by no means the only character that you can use for today. However, my Magneto has a tendency to outscore my Jean, but Magneto is pretty much used in ABL today. So he does have a tendency to score a little bit higher, but 14.1 million is not unreasonable. So now we'll talk about a couple alternatives. I'll talk about my team. I'll talk about my account builds so that you can get a basic idea for what's going on here. So I always record my scores here, so 14150 so I can track my progress as I work through AB. So let's go ahead and go back to the main screen. I realize I just left my rotation up again. I have a habit of doing that lately. I don't know if it's helpful to see the rotation at the top of the screen the whole time or not. So let's talk about my cards first. Cards are very important. Cards affect your whole account, so you do want to pay attention to your cards. With ABX, Pierce is not as important, but it does take an effect after you hit, I believe it's 8 million. Anything beyond 8 million, Pierce does play a pretty big factor in getting your score up higher. As you can see here, I've got some reasonable scores, but I do have only 16% Pierce because I've been re-rolling my cards for a while, trying to get those perfect cards, and I've actually hurt myself instead of just accepting Pierce as soon as I could get it, and trying to max it at 25%. Physical attack's also kind of low, but that doesn't affect Jean, so that's my overall stats for my cards. Going over here to my Jean. Alright, so Jean's Dark Phoenix uniform is the best uniform to use. I do have her at a tier 4, as you can see. Here are her overall stats. If you can, you want to try to cap on crit rate, crit damage, ignore defense, attack speed, dodge, and cooldown. Cooldown and ignore defense are must. They should be capped on all characters at all times. Everything else you want to get it as high as possible, especially if you're using a rage. This rotation that I just showed you with Jean Grey, it could work with a rage, it could work with a judgment, and it could work with the anger proc. Skills I always try to max out. It seems like Black Widow, as long as she is a tier 4 with a CTP, I do have her as a tier 4 with a CTP of Rage. It tends to be a great striker in ABX. That was a tip given to me by one of the other veteran players that I talk to a lot. You can use other strikers as well. Thor makes a really good one. You want to have your striker built. A lot of people try to do type matches, but there's certain characters that seem to elevate your score. So if you have Black Widow tier 4 or Thor tier 4, I would recommend using one of those because she doesn't need her striker to cancel. ISO 8 set kind of comes down to what you need. As you can see here, I have Overdrive. As always, when you're building an ISO 8 set, make sure you have 6 stars, all red, in order to get the most benefit out of that ISO 8 set. You want to try to roll one of the attack sets because those are meta, so anything like Overdrive, POA, or even Hawkeyes if you need some cooldown. Which one you get and which one you keep is going to be dependent upon your build and what your character needs, because each of those attack sets give you something different, but they all proc and give you a damage boost, which is why they're meta for AB. I do not have her artifact. It's only +7. It is a type match. Instinct type match is important, especially for tier 4s. I have a Brilliant Rage on her. I know you don't see a lot of those, but I actually have 3 on my account. Jean is definitely worthy of a Brilliant Rage, and of course she has the Enraged factor there as well. It is only at a 1.2, but it's still pretty reasonable. Uniform is a Mythic. This is her best uniform, hands down. If you use any of the other uniforms, she's not going to score anywhere near as much. And if you're interested, the uniform options are as follows. Blade Vampire Slayer, Maya Lopez, Marvel Studios Hawkeye, Professor X Classic, Gilgamesh, Marvel Studios Eternals, Scarlet Witch, Marvel Studios One Division. So that's the overall build there. Now let's go ahead and talk about the team up, why I chose it, and things to consider when you were building your team. Alright, let's go back to Arena, Alliance Battle, Challenge. So basically Ghost Panther's leadership is probably the best option for her, especially with it being open day. In my opinion, this is probably the best team to use. The only one that's better is using Magneto, but again, I'm going to be using Magneto today in ABL, so I want to save him. The Ghost Panther's leadership does do that additional fire damage, including having his support ability. There are other considerations and options, but Ghost Panther has one of the best support options in the game, which is damage dealt. So if you go here to his passives, I'm sorry, that is the wrong passive. Here to his passive, he is going to increase fire damage for Jean. So this is all allies. This applies to all allies. Supervillains get that extra 45% damage dealt. Damage dealt is much better than all attack. So that 50 plus his leadership, which is giving that 30, he is basically, well, you know, do the math. You know, what is 30 plus 50? That is 80% increased fire damage on top of damage dealt being increased by 45%. Phenomenal combo. Now, I do have an insight on him. He is insight worthy. However, so is Dazzler, so I have an insight on Dazzler as well. Insights do not stack. It is good to have insight on at least one of your AB characters. If you go over here to Dazzler, you might be like, why am I picking Dazzler of all characters? And that is because of her passive here. In my opinion, this is the best mutant passive in the game. So, mutant allies, so it only applies to mutants. If you don't know if your character is a mutant or not, because some characters that are supposed to be mutants, like Scarlet Witch, are not due to weird things with the media releases of certain characters. So if you go to your character, you have the basic info right here, you have the X that says mutant. You can also find that by going to the character page, going to details, and you will have the section here for allies. So she is considered a mutant because of the allies thing. It's not listed in her abilities. So that buff, if it doesn't say allies mutant, and if you go here and you hit the little magnifying glass and you do not see that X, which by clicking on it with your finger, or in my case my mouse, if you don't see that mutant, Dazzler does not work for that character. But when they are working for that character, it is increased basic damage dealt to boss types by 65%. That is astronomically high. Hands down, no contest. Best support for any mutant character. And as I had mentioned, oh, I do not have an insight on her yet. That's right, I don't think I pulled the trigger on that. So, do I have the insight in my inventory still? Nope, I must have given it to Polaris. Polaris. So anyway, as long as you have an insight on one of your characters. You know, I'm kind of curious if I gave it to her instead. I did. I gave it to Polaris instead. It was going to be Polaris or Dazzler for Storm Mutant Day for ABL. Anyway, that's my opinion of the best team up. Alternatives to Jean, it's open day. You pretty much can use any ABX character you want. Just keep in mind that you want to save some of your better ones for ABL. So because you can pretty much use anyone on your entire roster, just look at any of the other ABX days. I don't think I'm going to make specific recommendations for today. It's just, again, if you have the Dark Phoenix uniform, Jean's the way to go. Magneto with his winter uniform, which is seasonal, is a better option, but better for saving for ABL. All right, so I'm repeating myself now. Thank you for watching. If you found this video useful or helpful at all, please consider thumb upping and putting comments below. Interaction does help the algorithm, and I will continue to make more. May your ABX score be as high as possible.